Have you ever seen those pictures or videos where you see these little villages in Italy and it looks like the people are having so much fun? There's friendship, there's family, there's food. And you wondered, gosh, that looks great. How does a person experience that? How can I find that? Well, today you're going to learn how to lose the crowds and find what you're searching for in those communities where you get extra helpings of dessert and strangers become friends, because my guest is going to help you with that today. Welcome to Travel That Touches Your Soul. This is Karen Cleveland, and my goal is to bring you the people and the places around the world that help you connect with something greater than yourself or help you fulfill your dreams and desires. My guest today is Elizabeth Heath with Villaggio Tours. She lived most of her life in Florida, where she grew up. She's been in Italy in a small village for over 15 years, and she's really established herself in the Italy culture and as an expert. So welcome to the show, Liz. It's so great to have you.
Thanks. Thanks for the great intro.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share a video initially of what Liz does for everyone. I have to be honest, one of my first questions is, do you know what they're saying? Can you speak the language?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I have to. It was sink or swim when I moved here. Nobody in our town. I mean, a few people in our town speak English, but very few fluently, including
Okay.
my husband.
And
So
oh, okay. So tell me a
I
little
had
bit
to
about
learn.
this. What, how did you get to this place in life?
Hey, I went back to school somewhat later in life to work on a PhD in anthropology and archaeology. And I started coming to Italy to work on archaeological digs and spent a summer here in 2008 and wound up meeting my husband while I was here for that summer. I was in Orvieto, which is with about 10,000 people. We refer to it as the big city, over about 20 minutes from us. And I met him at a party, and he was born and raised in the town that we live in now, which is Allerona, which has we're in the old part, we're in the old town, which is the hill town that dates to the 1100s, and we have about 200 full-time residents in town. So
Wow.
that's why we call Orvieto the big city.
And
So it's a typical Italian hill town that was built around after the fall of the Roman Empire, the definitive fall of the empire, when they were hordes of, waves of invaders coming in, and people had to move up to high points in the ground, high spots in the ground, and build a wall. Parts of our walls are still standing, and the old town is contained in that curtain wall.
did do you continue to do your archaeological work?
I do not. I mean, I'm still passionate about archaeology, and I incorporate archaeology, visits to archaeological sites, visits to lesser known sites, a lot of underground sites when we go to Rome, as part of our tours. Um, Field archaeology is a young person's game. So I'm content. It's hard work. So I am quite content to take people to sites and have somebody else explain to us what's going on, and still,
Yeah.
convey my passion for archaeology, because I am really, when I see people at a site and they're digging, I really have this sense of FOMO. But
Yeah, I bet it is a young person's game. So tell us a little bit about this picture, and just to explain to
mm,
the audio, there's a gentleman and women hugging, a beautiful dark background with the flowers. It's at nighttime. Yeah. So what?
so this is a scene from one of our going away dinners. That's the last night of our week-long tours. We always host when weather permits, and that's most of the times of the year that I offer tours. We're able to do most of our activities outside. So we host this going away dinner, and it's a cookout, and the family and friends that our guests have met during the week all gather, and it's just a nice send off for our guests. And it usually ends in some watery eyes, I guess, which is have a little bit of that going on here. So these guests, she's hugging my mother-in-law. It's just always a real special. I mean, people realize that they've been part of something special, and when I always say, when guests cry when they leave, I feel like I really, like, this was a winner, right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
because I want to make people sad, but it's because people are just, they recognize the value of the experience that they've had.
Exactly, and they've been touched by it. So this is your mother-in-law she's hugging. So your entire family is involved in this experience for people, right? For guests,
Yes, yes, you're seeing the back of my mother-in-law just to
right?
communicate that the other woman was our guest. My mother, well, my husband helps me with the tours. I kind of refer to him as our color commentary because he's a raconteur and he's got a big personality and he likes to joke around with people and he's just very good at breaking the ice with people and even when guests feel maybe a little bit reserved. It's hard to feel too reserved around Paolo because he has this gregarious personality. So his friends help us, his family, his mom and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, his sister, run our cooking classes. So we go to his mom's kitchen, which is this very humble Italian little old lady's kitchen, which is just like the ones that you see in, old Italian movies. And, there's a TV on. We don't have the TV on during the cooking classes, but typically there's a TV on and pots on the stove. And so we have our cooking classes there. And then during the week, my relatives and Paolo's family are helping us prepare meals. And I say his cousin. When you don't quite know what to call people, you call them a cousin or an uncle, something,
Right.
right? Because you're sort of related, but not exactly. One of his cousins, his older cousins, brings the grappa to the dinners because he makes his own grappa. So after everybody's had a nice, boozy dinner or lunch with wine, Pepe cracks out the grappa, and everybody who swore they'd never taste grappa in their lives has a little sample. Or it's not performative. These aren't Italians who are putting on a show for you. They're Italians who are welcoming you into their homes and their lives and their community and are just happy that you're here, proud of their food, proud of their traditions, and very pleased to be able to share that in an authentic way.
And then here's another experience. It looks like a fun getting down to the earth kind of thing.
Yeah, this is just helping our friend pick his grapes because it was near the end of the harvest season and he hadn't gotten out to get his grapes harvested yet. So after lunch, we said, "Hey, does anybody want to go pick grapes?" And everybody jumped in and they had a grape harvesting experience. And then of course Domenico, who's our friend, who
Wow.
those are his grapes. He cracked open the wine and some salami and bread and some other snacks and things. And everything ends with food. It seems like everything begins and ends with food here.
His own wine?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you make wine?
We do not. We have our own
Okay.
olive oil. I
Okay.
mean, we don't make the olive oil. I mean, we have our own olive trees. We pick the olives, we take them to the mill. And that might be the experience that guests have too. It just depends on depending on the time of year. Grapes are September, olives are generally October, November. And we schedule tours around the harvests too, so that when our guests are here in the fall, hopefully they're hitting one of those two harvests. And if we do the olive harvest, then we take the olives to the olive mill and we watch as they go into the hopper and our olive oil comes out, in about an hour's time. And in the meantime, we have an olive oil tasting session where the person who helps run the mill explains how you taste oil and what the differences are. And here's oil that came from this kind of tree, and here's oil that came from that kind of tree. And it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's amazing. That would be a great experience. These are some of the guests, or is this family?
These were our first guests.
Okay.
I launched Villaggio Tours in 2023 with a Facebook post to just my friends on Facebook, and I said, "Hey, we're doing this. I'm doing a beta test." It was a discounted tour to just make sure we were on the right track. And I had 8 guests altogether, including this group of 4 just terrific friends who came together. It was the first time in Italy for all of them, and they just had so much fun, and they were so happy to be here, and just terrific guests.
Yeah,
And it helped us realize that we were onto something too.
That's fantastic.
This is an introduction to a truffle hunt. So we have friends, partners, we call them, partners with us in tour, who have a private truffle reserve So we meet them there. And again, they always have a little breakfast spread out for us. And then we go out for a walk through their reserve with their dogs and hunt for truffles, which are, they're tuber, they're a fungus, basically a fungi that grow underground, and they use specially trained dogs to find them. So people get to see the dogs at work and how, they're able to sniff out these things and, dig and dig and dig and dig. And they're happy to get a piece of salami or some sort of treat in exchange for the truffle. And so
Nice.
this is our friend, Emiliano's just explaining.
How fun.
This is the beginning of the hunt. This is
Yeah.
from our cooking class. So we have a cooking lesson that's a sort of a signature part of our 1 week tour experience. And we make two kinds of pasta, including ravioli. So these are fresh raviolis that we then cook and eat for lunch.
I'm getting a little bit hungry. That all looks really good.
This is one of our lunches. That's my mother-in-law's dining room. So this is all of my group that participated in the cooking class or waiting for the food to come out.
I think it's fantastic that these are truly authentic in people's houses. Where do people sleep?
We have a guest house that just opened in the fall. Our guest house is called Six Keys Guest House, and it's 6 keys because we have 6 rooms. Was the whole impetus behind the tours, because a few years ago we bought this old, completely dilapidated house up in the village that my husband had his eye on for years. And the price kept going down and going down and going down. And finally we grabbed it, didn't know what to do with it. And I just, having worked in tourism for several years as a travel writer and been on different types of group tours and had all these different travel experiences, and just sort of seen how travel and tourism had changed in Italy over the decade and plus that I'd been involved in tourism here, the light bulb just kind of went off. And I always remember like our friends and family who come to visit just love their experiences in town. And God, that lunch with Franca was the best, or going mushroom hunting that day was so much fun. And that's what we just took that and bottled it into a small group tour, with the aim of that this house was always going to be the base for our
Okay.
tours. And prior to that, we had comfortable guest houses in town. Now we have our own place in town, and we just love it. And it, it's comfy and cozy and smells good and it's stylish, and just love everything about it. So,
Right.
so that houses up to 12 people in 6 rooms. And then if we go over that, or if we need, people need their own spaces, we don't have people that are willing to share a room, we have other places in town where people can stay very comfortably. But 6 keys is always home base. This is the dining room of a palace in Allerona that you would not know was there until we knock on the door and they're ushered into this, regal space. And this belongs to a family that is descended from Italian nobility. And they've had the house. The house has been in their family since the 1600s. So, we're welcomed into their home. We get a tour of the home, an explanation of the house's history, the family's history is innately tied to the history of the village as well. And then they prepare this beautiful, this is what we call an apericena. So aperitivo is like an appetizer, right? Like a happy hour. And
Okay.
cena is dinner. So
Okay.
apericena is like heavy antipasto that becomes a dinner. So this is all local products, including some things that they produce. They produce their own olive oil as well. They use wine from, that comes from probably within a 10-mile radius, all focused as much as possible on 0-kilometer products.
You know what I really love about this is people really do want this connection and learning about the actual life, because if you go to Rome, and there's still value in going to Rome and seeing the ruins, but it's just so big and crowded and distant. And so coming to the small villages really adds a lot learning about Italy, and not just looking at things.
Yeah, I think that, I take guests to Rome and I take guests to Venice and I'll take them to Florence if they want to go to Florence. And I can give them very, I don't want to bandy about the word authentic too much, but I use guides in those places who do share stories and talk about growing up, what it was like to grow up in Venice or growing up in Rome or
Yeah.
like that. So we get that human, personal connection, but not in the same way that we can offer, when we're inviting people to our cousin's garden and their kids are playing on the swing set in the background here. And,
Yeah.
there's children running around and there's music playing and it's just food and food, platters and platters of food coming out. And it's just a
Yeah.
different experience.
It looks so amazing.
This is our, one of my guests termed it an ethnobotanical hike. And that is actually a very good term for it because our guide, the guy with the yellow shirt on, Adio, runs the Osteria, this rustic restaurant set in the woods. And so we set out from there on a nature walk. It's like, I call it a site that's somewhere between a walk and a hike because there's a little bit of, uphill scrambling, but mostly it's walking. As we walk, he explains a lot about human interaction with the environment here.
Oh,
So, every place where we see pine trees used to be farmland. And then when the farms were abandoned after the end of the basically the tenant farming traditions in Italy, people moved into the cities and there's the whole history, there's sort of like geopolitical history too, social political. And then, and this plant's edible. And people knew that they could use this plant if they had a toothache. And then, we taste it and, as we're walking and this is, this is a leftover. He takes us to a pile of ruins that's been there. It's on a map in the Vatican museums from the 1600s.
wow.
So that spot that we're standing. And then we go back to the restaurant and we eat dishes that were prepared with all of these various edible herbs that we talked about when we were out on our walk.
That's
So
amazing.
I would say this is one of our signature experiences and people I say everything. I say, oh, people love it. People love it, but people really do love it.
No, I can see why. Really being in touch with the land, which is often forgotten in the cities and other
It's
places.
very much the way we live here too, though. And I'm
Okay.
not saying this is some contadina farmer or something, because I've certainly not been a person who's been terribly in touch with the land in my life, but I am much more now. As I always say, it's
Okay.
like we're a lot closer to our food in Italy and in
Okay.
rural Italy, yeah, particularly in a lot of ways. Living with the land is still very much part of life,
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
This is a guest birthday this is in Civita di Bagnoregio, which is another one of our day trips. So we usually do like a day around Allerona and then a day out somewhere. And, we have a van with a driver that takes us to different areas. I try not to keep people in a van for much longer than about 40 minutes or so, just because who wants to see Italy looking out the window of a van? So we try
Right.
to do day trips that are manageable without terribly long car rides. So Civita, and I probably have another few photos of that coming up, is called the Dying City. And it's currently has a population of 5, and it's perched very dramatically on a
Wow.
hill, not far from Orvieto. So we go out there, and that's one of our real kind of wow experiences. Here it is. So it's the dying city for a couple of reasons, because it is eroding and falling into the valley behind it. And they're not doing anything to try to stop what is eventually going to be the disintegration of the city.
Okay.
And the dying city because it's not very convenient to live out there because that long footbridge is the only way in and out of town.
Oh, wow.
So our guests, we get there, you see this, I don't know what the word is, but when you see it for the first time, the city perched up on the bluff like that is really quite dramatic. And then we walk out there and spend a few hours there, have lunch and, get our photos and walk back.
So all groceries or food or other products people
Yeah.
need to live
Residents
there.
residents are allowed to come and go with a moped
Okay.
or maybe a little appetto, which are like those little carts. And then they
Uh-huh.
do have people who can't walk very well, they have a sort of a ATV that will take people back and forth. But it's not, unless you have for tourists, unless you have a wheelchair, you have to walk out. There's my husband and my daughter in the front there. This is one of our cooking classes too. We had guests come, and so we do the cooking classes as a 1 day experience, even if people don't want to do, if they're already in Italy, maybe they're staying in Orvieto, and again,
Okay.
they're looking for something that's not just a run of the mill sort of touristy experience. They can come out and just do a 1 day cooking class with us, which always ends in lunch and wine and grappa and people
Fun.
needing a nap when lunch is over. These are couples in Orvieto, so we spend time in Orvieto as well, which again we call it the big city. It was strategically important during the era of the Papal States, and when Italy was divided in different sort of feudal kingdoms rather than a unified country. It still has several important sites, and it's also just a lovely place to, there's nice shops and restaurants. We go to some of our favorite places, favorite restaurants there, and also do some experiences that people might not be able to find on their own.
This looks interesting. Is it a
Yeah.
cave?
It's a cantina. So that's our friend Domenico, and those were his grapes that we were picking in the earlier photo. So, and this is what he
Oh,
makes his wine. So this is dug into, you have to figure that these cities that are up on hills are on they're on a limestone or tufa, which is a volcanic rock bluff. And most of them have cantinas. Most of the houses have caves underneath, which we call cantinas. And they would have been used for cold storage, which is in the era before
okay.
refrigerators. They
Okay.
say that keep your wine and your olive oil and your cured meats and grain all at a steady temperature. So it kept food from spoiling.
Okay.
And people still use their cantinas. We have a cantina at Six Keys Guest House, and we have our wine stash down there.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's a natural cellar. So at the video again, so why don't you tell the guests, everything will be in the show notes, of course, but
Mhm.
your website,
Sure.
if you have anything coming up this year you particularly want to
Oh,
let
yeah.
people know
Yeah.
about?
And I just realized to share photos of our guest house with you.
Oh,
And it's beautiful, and we're really, really pleased with the way it turned out. My husband is a traditional stonemason, so he did all of the work on the guest house, and he is definitely one of a dying breed who still knows how to work with, walk into a 13th century house and say, okay, this and this and this and this, and here's what we need to do here. Here's what we need to do there. So we preserved the antique character of the house, but inserted modern comforts, and it's just this very nice mix of contemporary and antique
hmm.
that works very well. So our website is villaggiotours.com, and Villaggio is Villaggio tours, all connected.com. And then the guest house is 6keysumbria.com.
Oh, okay. So it has its own website.
Yeah, it has its
Okay.
own. It also runs as a separate entity, because when we don't have tours scheduled, you can just rent a room and come stay with us, come visit us in Allerona for a few
Oh,
days.
great.
I have upcoming, we have tours scheduled in April and May. And our April tour begins April 18th. It's our springtime immersive Umbria. And there is the option of adding on 3 nights in Rome with that too. And I have several people who were already joined. Some have joined just for the week in Allerona, and some are doing the Rome extension as well. And then in May, on May 16th, we have our springtime immersive Umbria, but it includes our most important festival in town.
Oh,
It's a traditional folk festival for Sant'Isidoro, who is the patron saint of the farmers. He's the patron saint of agriculture.
okay.
So it's a mix of, it's interesting, it's a mix of pagan and Christian traditions. There's a
Yeah.
lot of these folk traditions and
Yeah.
throughout, I guess, all over the world. Italy certainly no exception to that. Festival that's linked to productive harvest. So our guests will be here in time for the festival and then pick up on, the rest of our week of activities. So we're really excited for that one too. And we have several people signed up. And then we reconvene in September. And I have a tour that takes in Giglio Island, which is this just idyllic island right off the coast of Tuscany. And we spend 3 nights there, snorkeling and boating and hiking. And we have this fantastic lunch. We hike down to a vineyard, and they have this lunch just spread out for us. And there's this sea, and it's fabulous. It
Wow.
exceeded my expectations. And our guests as well. And then that follows with days in Allerona. So that's we call that, sea and countryside. And then in the fall, we have our tours that are linked to different harvests, to the grape and the olive harvest. And I also run a tour in November that starts in Venice and includes 3 nights in Venice and then follows up with a week in Allerona. We can do custom tours and private tours. If you come
Right.
to me with a group and say, hey, what can we do? We can figure it out.
Nice, nice. I think I will need to go visit you within the next couple years, and it all sounds and looks wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been fascinating learning about all this and seeing all this, and yeah, a personal experience like this is exactly the kind of things that I love, that people love, that I want to promote. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
All right, you're welcome. And guests, thank you for listening and watching, and I'll connect with you again later.